This is 10 minutes past 11 p.m. British local time, which is 22:10 hours GMT on Friday, the 23rd of September 2022. This is the KhoodeelaarTV television channel, broadcasting under the banner theme of BabyAngelGeronimo, BabyAngelGeronimo Editions. And the headlines in the Fleet Street papers on Saturday, as are being previewed this evening, show that Quasi Quatrang, whom I call the mental slave and nephew Tom, has already tanked the economy by stupidly, ignorantly announcing the so-called mini budget. Even the Murdoch scum is calling it the economy is tanking. So there will be lots and lots of items about the disaster that is the regime fronted by Liz Truss. Liz Truss ran her so-called campaign against Rishi Sunak by issuing almost on an hourly basis all kinds of new solutions to problems that defy this kind of solutions, problems that have been created over centuries by the lying crooks, the conservatives, and the big business, etc., and the City of London, and so on. Liz Truss is a shallow individual, lacking the intellect, and lacking the depth, and lacking the morality, and lacking the actual sense. She was very keen to come across as being eager to grab hold of the kind of propensity of the Little Englanders to be deluded by anything that was presented before them. So that's how she ran the corrupt so-called election campaign against Rishi Sunak. And once in now, she is coming apart, especially as she has ill-advisedly and stupidly and dishonestly appointed this moron, mental slave, Quatang, to be the finance minister. And looking at her tendency or a trend, she may drop him and replace him with another mental slave, the bad Enoch one. But whoever she replaces the latest bad Enoch one with will not solve the problem that society faces. And the main problem in society is that there is no actual democratic audit and accountability. Now, examining Pakistan's Imran Khan's ignorant and simplistic reference to the rule of law and citing Britain as the main country that actually is the best example of rule of law, it is shocking. How could Imran Khan be saying these things? Contradictory, ill-informed, and so on. Rule of law is not by itself. Rule of law is not by itself and cannot be by itself. Availability of justice and fairness. Because rule of law is a technicality. For example, when the Third Reich, fronted by Adolf Hitler in Germany, he got elected, and then he introduced all kinds of fascistic, murderous kind of measures. All of those were according to the quote rule of law, because all of those things were made legal. And Imran Khan has not made any qualification in any of his references to the any of his banal and bland references to the rule of law, the phrase rule of law. And he has not qualified that by even including the due process, the concept of due process. Even if due process and rule of law were combined together, they still would not be the same thing as guaranteeing fairness. There has to be something else in the mix, and that something else is the morality, the ethics, objectively defined, universally defined. And Imran Khan's hasty kind of rush to the quotation of the Prophet, or to the alleged quotation of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, exposes him to the complete and utter ignorance that dominates the regimes, the so-called Muslim regimes across the world. And of course, it is not unknown that the non-Muslim so-called world is, of course, even worse in terms of the absence of morality and ethics. So Imran Khan's rush to the Prophet's hadiths and his selected references to the companions of the Prophet as the sources of some of the sayings that he is claiming to be referring to, they don't take account contextually, they don't take account of the country, Arabia, the what is now known as Saudi Arabia, the place that the Prophet lived in, Medina and Mecca, and the history of the places and the actual weight, the weight of the cultural kind of bias against the manifesto that Imran Khan is interpreting the Prophet to have been introduced. So there are all kinds of things that Imran Khan needs to be adding by way of clarification, by way of concise and clear and dependable, kind of reliable references and sources for the manifesto, which is what I think he is setting out to present, or setting out and presenting. It is also noticeable that the top table people in the various jalsas and the gatherings that Imran Khan is the main speaker at, any contribution from any of those people, who are all, of course, fans of Imran Khan at the present time and supporters of him, and suitably preparing to kind of make themselves available for positions should a general election happen, and should the Tehreek Insaf party get hold of the majority and form the government in Pakistan. There is no reference in Imran Khan's commentary so far, not in the last 4 months, the ones that I have observed and studied on a daily basis. There is no mention of the actual contents of the media, the Pakistan media, and especially no reference to the disastrous state to which the daily dawn has been reduced. Now, dawn is the one that Ali Jinnah treated as his organ and the organ of the Muslim League in the pre 1947, pre August 1947 years. And the Dawn was the paper that was edited by a man from Silot, Maulvi Bazar, a student of the MC College. Altaf Hussain, there is no reference to Altaf Hussain. There is no reference to the decline of the Dawn and the actual reasons for the decline of the Dawn. Because if Imran Khan understood the matlab for Pakistan, that is the purpose of Pakistan, then he would have been talking about the Dawn and why Jinnah chose the Dawn as the main organ in the English language for the Muslims of the subcontinent in those days. The Dawn has been taken over by crooks and criminals, succession of criminals and crooks. And from time to time, my attempts at raising awareness on the part of these criminals about the specific, unique history of the Dawn newspaper have been frustrated by the criminality and obstructiveness created by these built-in crooks and liars and idiots. So Imran Khan has been, whoever is briefing him is briefing him too inadequately. And the fact that Imran Khan has to keep referring to his skills and achievements as a cricketer really shows serious and worrying absence of relevance to the task that awaits anyone who really wants to create the atmosphere of free, real azadi, real independence in Pakistan, what remains of Pakistan. So we shall be coming back to this Imran Khan theme. As I have summarized, this is the accurate summary of the latest delivery of the spiels that Imran Khan has been making regularly in the various events and jalsas or gatherings. There has been no comment that I can detect in any of the footage that I've seen or I do see, mainly made available by Ball News or Kudrat Television or ARY News. These are the platforms that are carrying Imran Khan's footage, if you like, from the gatherings. There is no reference by any of these people who appear on these platforms as commentators, no references to the Matlab Kya Pakistan's Matlab, no references to the role played by the people who were very much and very genuinely engaged and active for the realization of independence from the British. There is no reference. Even after Imran Khan briefly mentioned her, Sarojini Naidu, who called Muhammad Ali Jinnah the ambassador of Hindu-Muslim unity. Even after Imran Khan made a reference to Sarojini Naidu, the Pakistani kind of media, or the ones that I can have access to, are not bothering to talk about Sarojini Naidu, let alone Gokhale. And these are the people that actually played very, very important parts. And as they're not even talking about those, It goes without saying that they're not talking about Sher Bangla Fazlul Haq or Abdul Hamid Khan Bashani. And the fact that Bashani and Fazlul Haq are also, in terms of political kind of status given to them, have been sent abroad. They have been deported by the political cabal controlling the state in Bangladesh for most of the years after Ziaur Rahman was murdered. So where do we go in terms of the actual evidence of what is happening by way of the revolution in the subcontinent? We can't find the revolution anywhere. What we can find, say for example, looking at the Indian kind of version of the newspaper, so-called the media, they are too ignorant and too poisonous to know what is happening in Pakistan. They are shaking with worry and alarm at the excited crowds in Pakistan. No doubt about that. But they're hiding their kind of fear about a democratic movement that may take over the subcontinent. They're hiding it. I mean, the media, so called in Bangladesh, comes last of all because the mentality of the people who write, edit, and appear on the mainstream, so called in Bangladesh, the mentality is very low. These are ignorant people whose ignorance is worse than the ignorance of their counterparts in India and the ignorance of their counterparts in Pakistan. I mean, these are people that behave in a disgracefully mentally servile way. For example, illustrated by the fact that some of the so-called Bangladeshi conservatives in the UK have been losing no time in rushing to get photographed or taken selfies of themselves standing near Liz Truss. Why the rush? It's the same question that applies to the shirk that these so-called Muslims have been committing in their expressions stupidly called personal kind of loss that they claim to have suffered as a result of or in the passing of Brenda, Queen Elizabeth II. None of these people has had any personal links with any of the families or the families of the flunkies of Brenda's family. So how do they manage to write things like personally saddened? It's grotesque, untruthful, dishonest. These are the types of people that have actually been parading the myths and the lies that have been denying the people of the subcontinent even the basic democratic benefits of the British imperialists formally leaving in August 1947. The ease with which these mentally and servile ones have updated their Facebook and Twitter accounts with praise for lies, trust, and sadness and bereavement. They claim it to be a bereavement. It cannot be a bereavement, you morons. You are not bereaved because Brenda was nothing to do with your being her family members. Her own family, her grandson, Harry, it is undeniable that Harry is the grandson. Harry has been deported from the family precisely because Harry married this woman of mixed race. So Brenda was a symbol of all white purity. Of course, the person or persons who hopefully hope that Brian, who is Brenda's son, now known as King Charles III, they hope that Brian would bring about change, bring about change to the monarchy. What kind of change do they think he will bring about? It is not possible to see what kind of changes he could bring about. Because for decades, Brian has been depicted, at least in the private eye satirical publication, as getting increasingly fed up as he has been waiting for Brenda to snuff it. To those who are not familiar with the phrase snuff it means to die. Natural causes, of course. And private eye from time to time has taken the piss of Brian by appropriately or inappropriately ascribing to him feelings of frustration that Brenda is still around. Because it doesn't require, the monarchy doesn't require education, enlightenment, and any of the values that otherwise are floated as around the monarchy. Especially the main headings. Well, they're saying that Andrew Neil, Brilopad Neil, has made a typically racist and ignorant, idiotic boast. He says, we, meaning the racists in the UK, don't appreciate our achievements enough. Then he goes on to say, but look at the world celebrating with awe the passing of Brenda and the big events around her funeral. Shows how high is the regard for the British institution across the world. How pathetic, because that's not true. What is happening across the world in terms of the media replicating copy and footage whatsoever sold and syndicated by British and American and Western owned companies is that they are running plastic without any content, substance, any ethics or morality. They're running this footage because the footage is colorful and it looks like being involved with something that is happening currently now. That's all that is happening. And the fact that the commercial outlets like the supermarkets have still not removed their boards from their premises, which contain Brenda's pictures, and of course, the photographs. Some of the pictures and the photographs have been, in technical terms, quite attractive visually. So that's what the consumers, that is to say, the newspapers, the television companies in Africa and Asia, that's what they've been doing. None of those outlets has had the ability, intellectually, the ability or the awareness morally about Brenda's 70 years. So there is no content in the kind of coverage. There is no content whatsoever in the coverage about the role that Brenda played in the degenerate regimes that were set up during her 70 years by various incumbents at number 10 Downing Street. None of the scandals that exploded politically, exploded under none of the scandals surrounding Boris Johnson none of the scandals that exploded during Brenda's years or decades, she has not, let's say, influenced the moral accountability in this country. So when you look at the front pages or the main headings on the occasion of the funeral, and you look at the where they used words as if she's a deity, she's a kind of miniature goddess, you do know that they are absolutely lying and they are unfit for purpose. And the fact that there is no outrage against that kind of deification of Brenda from the Little Englanders shows that their brainwashing state or their state of brainlessness is complete. As I've mentioned, one particular line that the television channels have run, they approach these people on the queues and they ask these people standing on the queues for long hours whether they would continue to wait in the queues for longer hours if the hours even increased. And these people, without any fail, without any exception, they shrugged their shoulders and said no, they won't mind at all. So what is the lesson? What is it that Brenda has left behind as a legacy morally? And what is it that these people were mourning? What is it that they were marking as they did that and said that they would stand in the queues for as long as it took? There was nothing except a banal statement that she is the queen. I mean, that is the extent of the permanence of the brainwashing stump in the minds of these people. She is the queen. So, where is the brain of these individuals? And where is the rigor? Where is the curiosity? Where is the search for evidence? Where is the question for justice? How many acts of injustice committed by the state in her name has she condemned or distanced herself from? None. And that absence of any condemnation on Brenda's part of the injustices done by the state in her name or the agencies of the state operating in her name shows that Brenda, far from being a deity and far from being justifiably raised and elevated to the levels that she has been, was in fact the licensor of these many, many, many perpetrations. Because after the very rightly expressed condemnations of her monarchy following the murder of Diana in the Paris underground tunnel, Brenda issued this phrase, annus horribilis. The year, horrible year. Annus horribilis should have been said about Brexit and about the many murders committed by the police of innocent black people and the many deaths in the channel of many children and adults trying to get to the UK. And of course, Brenda must have been held to account. But she could not be held to account because she is the monarch. And the fact that she could not be held to account, of course, exposes the monarchy for the total and absolute absurdity of the thing. Alongside with the overhyped processions and queues for seeing Brenda in state, lying in state, there have been quite a few events, both in the UK as well as in the rest of the territory. Brenda has not shown the capacity to examine any of the claims made about the literally thousands that she has given the gongs to. Because most of the eager kind of recipients of the gongs, the British Empire medals, this, that, and the other, especially the ones coming from African Asian backgrounds, these people have no shame, no self respect whatsoever. And I have to mention in this context the behavior of a particular grocery shop in Brick Lane itself, number 43 Brick Lane, as it was in 1980-81 when the Odikar Weekly that I founded in December 1990. The man that ran the grocery shop had the copies of the Odikar along with the copies of the other papers that he stocked. And the picture of his window being broken by a racist attack on the window was the picture taken by Azizul Haq, and it was the main picture on the back page of the Odikar which I designed and which remains to this day the best designed of the outlets published in the name of the Bangladeshis in this country. And the poem that I wrote on the front page of the first edition of the Odikar dated the 19th of December 1980. এখানে আকাশে জানি চাঁদ উঠে না। These are acts and work that are unprecedented, unparalleled in the context. The UK Bangladeshis or the Bangladeshis anywhere outside of Bangladesh or Bangladeshis inside Bangladesh itself. When Ziaur Rahman, quote, President Ziaur Rahman, visited the UK, the local Bangladeshi High Commission at the time when Ziaur Rahman visited the UK, the preparations were being discussed about his short trip to Brick Lane. These preparations have been discussed for weeks in the Bangladesh High Commission, which was of the opinion that Ziaur Rahman should just stroll along in Brick Lane and then finish the visit. I sent Azizul Haq with the instructions that led to the actual agreement that instead of Ziaur Rahman just walking past or walking through Brick Lane, he would actually address a public gathering of Bangladeshis in a public space, which he did. Now, that was the speech and the appearance by Ziaur Rahman that gave him the most prominent reference in the British media, mainstream media, during his whole trip to the UK. And I also I wrote and published a magazine marking Ziaur Rahman's visit. Ziaur Rahman was so pleased and impressed with that publication that when I attended a meeting with him along with a number of other individuals at a hotel in London, I saw that he was actually clutching at that particular publication. The standard of writing, the standard of neutrality and impartiality, and the quality of the commentary, all of those were far higher than anything that has been seen before or since in any of the publications done by the outlets that claim to be serving the Bangladeshis in the UK. I mean, Ziaur Rahman was clutching at that magazine, unaware that he was actually speaking to the man who had devised it and had written it. Just to prove how corrupt the overwhelming majority of the Bangladeshis in the UK claiming to represent various groups and things are. I published that and gave credit to the group of boys that I was tutoring for 7 years. Now, as one of the acts of treachery, these boys, none of whom could write, let alone properly read the contents of the magazine, but they were being in collusion, complicity with the unknown individuals who advised them not to have their names at the back of the magazine as being involved in the publication of it. How totally stupid. They will never, in the rest of their lives, have 1/1,000,000th of an opportunity to be associated with such a standard, high-class publication. Their secret colluders instructed them to say to me that my name should be there. So I put my name modestly. I didn't say that I was the one who did it. I said that I had agreed to do it. I mean, words to that effect. I'm not looking at the magazine here, but that is the memory. And I then wrote the whole thing up because I gave bylines to a number of these boys to pieces that I had written. This was nearly 40 years ago. And 40 years later, none of these boys can come to anywhere near writing one sentence of the quality that I wrote and gave them credit for. I mean, these were the ones that were really misled by a number of criminals, including a British secret operative called John Newbegin. He was a British spy deployed in Tower Hamlets to discourage these boys from following the radical, ethical, moral platform that I was creating them as part of. These are the boys that actually took part in distributing some of the leaflets that I wrote, designed, edited, etc., as part of the response to the attack on the community by the Sunday Times magazine, dated the 2nd of December 1973. A magazine that I produced to mark Ziaur Rahman's visit to Brick Lane has never been matched by anything else. And yet, literally millions of pounds of public money, the UK public money, has been paid to groups of community leaders over the years, both through the local Tower Hamlets Council and through the GLC, and directly from the various sources controlled by the UK Ministry of the Interior, that is the Home Office. I'm the only one who did not seek any money, nor receive any money, nor would accept any money if given. I produce the work with my own resources being applied. That is the only halal way I could do it. All this leadership is contaminated and corrupt. One publication that I shall not be examining in detail today, but refer to it again, is the so-called PhD thesis bearing the name of a Bengali midget called Ali Asghar the moron. The Bengali midget from North Bengal, Ali Asghar, and his co-criminal wife Majeda are the criminals responsible for a so-called PhD thing that the crooks and racists and criminals at the so-called university, so-called Russell Group University, the University of Birmingham, gave to this moron. Now, the fact that this Ali Asghar the midget was a midget to begin with, and has been a midget and will remain and die a midget, is proven in the disaster that he created for his daughter. The midget destroyed the soil cheater business of his daughter. The midget, after retiring from his so called jobs, insisted that although he was not a licensed law trader or whatever, he would plague his daughter and act as the business secretary or the manager of this whole cheater's business, sited not far from the East London Mosque in Whitechapel. The midget Ali Asghar included in his so-called PhD thing the highly defamatory act of piece of criminality. Now, the reason why I'm not naming the source of the defamation is because that criminal is about to be given the treatment that he thought he would not be given because of his that particular attack against me. So I'm keeping that criminal boy, scum boy that I call him, in suspense. The scum boy and other criminals like Usman Ghani, illegal immigrant, are motivated by what in Siloti called Zeed. Although it can be translated into the jealousy, the actual depth of the hatred that the Siloti original word Zeed conveys cannot be translated into another word. It can only be translated with a detailed kind of additional qualification. জিদুয়া ফুয়াই হকলটি এখান হইয়া তারা জলরা 50 বছর ধরিয়া বিভিন্ন জিদুয়া ফুয়াইন জলরা খালি তারা আর জিদর কারণ হইল যে আমি একটা না একটা পজিশন আমি যাইমু মাখালোর ফুয়াইনতে কোনোদিন চিন্তা করছে না যে আমি কোনো পজিশনে যাওয়ার তো দরকার নাই আমি অলরেডি occupying positions all the time, positions that they will never ever be able to achieve even a fraction of. So this criminal boy, scum boy, told the midget a piece of grotesque untruth, and the midget actually put that in as a fact. He should not have done that. And the midget's supervisor, so-called idiots at the University of Birmingham, didn't bother checking. Now, of the entirety of that particular so-called PhD thesis, the only significant individual mentioned there is me. The only one who is, quote, criticized or critically referred to by the midget is me. But it's not critical at all. Because the midget completely failed. And in an edition that I shall be talking about the midgetry in detail, I shall have that text in front of me so that I can read the whole thing for anyone who is viewing that edition of the KhoodeelaarTV television channel. The midget Ali Asghar destroyed his daughter's ambitions. He fucked her up. because he wanted to plague her. And he was so bad at managing that his stupidity was the one that destroyed the solicitors' business. And the Solicitors Regulation Authority scrapped the license for that particular business. And this poor girl ended up doing something else, totally fucked up. All her life, the midget has fucked her up. He has interfered with her, and he has interfered with her, and he has completely twisted her mind. So I shall be talking about the midget Ali Asghar and his so-called PhD issued to him by the stupid morons from the so-called University of Birmingham. There is another liar who has done a PhD about the same Siloti community in Tower Hamlets. Now that idiot is called John Eade. And John Eade, against all the evidence, stuffed his idiotic PhD thesis with packs and packs of lies about Hamlets, and especially lies against the work that I have been doing, especially the Benth organization. Now, John Eade, the moron, actually had met me. In fact, he had invited me to the college where he was attached at the time. That was some years before the so-called PhD thing. That was when the Benth organization was not yet subjected to the treachery and the corruption and criminality of this scumboy and other morons that said that the Benth bulletin was not written by me. ওই মাখালোর ফুয়াইন, তোমরা 14 গোষ্ঠী যদি এখানো করো, তবুও তো তোমরা এক Benth bulletin লিখতে পারতে না, শুয়োরের বাচ্চাইন. So why did you meet at the Toynbee Hall, বেইমান hall, and put the statement on the record that I didn't write the Benth bulletin? If I didn't write the Benth bulletin, who did then? তোমরা অকলটি মিলিয়া বেইমানের ফুয়াইন গত 30 বছর ধরে তোমরা এক পাত্তা লিখতে পারছো নি, বেইমানের বাচ্চাইন. There is a limit to this impossible kind of assertion. তারা জলিয়া মরের খিলা আমারে ডিফাইম করতো, আমারে ডিসক্রেডিট করতো. আমারে তো ডিসক্রেডিট করার এভিডেন্স থাকতে হইব তো নানি. I am one of the widely recognized original world-class writers, commentators. এটা তো আমার বিরুদ্ধে ইউজ করা সম্ভব না. মাখালোর ফুয়াইনতে কইলে এখানে যে বেন্থ বুলেটিন আমি লেখছি না. তোমরা শুয়োরের বাচ্চা আইন গত 30 বছর ধরে তোমরা এক পাত্তা লিখতে পারছো নি. যদি লিখতে পারোতে বার করো শুয়োরের বাচ্চা আইন. বেইমানের ফুয়াইন ইল্লিগেল সকলটির লগে চার পাঁচ নাম এখানো করা অগুরে বাপ ডাকি অগুরে বাপ ডাকি আইসেন তোমরার মা বাবার পরিচয় ঠিক নাই মামুরে বাপ ডাকি আইসেন কোনগু কোনগু সাসারে বাপ ডাকি আইসেন ও তারে সোর্স করিয়া মিজেট আলিয়াস করে আমার বিরুদ্ধে পিএইচডি লেখে এই কুত্তার বাচ্চা আলিয়াস গর চিন্তা করছত নি আমার লগে বইয়া যে আমারে তারিফ করছে এই সিসিটিএইচও এটা তোর মনে নাইনি বেইমানের ফুয়া how can you compare these people how can you compare these people with the likes of Sarojini Naidu Sarojini চট্টোপাধ্যায় আসলে বিক্রমপুর জন্ম বিক্রমপুরের ফ্যামিলি হইল গিয়া ফ্যামিলির বাড়ি হইল ঢাকার বিক্রমপুর এরিয়া সরোজিনী নাইডু যে ব্রিটিশের বিরুদ্ধে যে ইতিহাসের মাঝে লেখা এটা পড়লে বোঝা যাইত না যে এই বেটির পরিবারের সূত্র হইল অরিজিন হইল গিয়া ঢাকার বিক্রমপুর বিক্রমপুরের বামন ফ্যামিলির চট্টোপাধ্যায় ফ্যামিলির জন্ম সরোজিনী চট্টোপাধ্যায় তো বিয়ার নাম হইল কি নাইডু নাইডু নামে এক বেটার লগে বিয়া হওয়ার বাদে সরোজিনী নাইডু হইল সারা সাবকন্টিনেন্টের মাঝে একমাত্র বেটি মানুষ পলিটিশিয়ান যে বিভিন্ন পজিশনে গেছে যেটা অনেক বেটা মানুষে পারছেন না রিচ করতা সরোজিনী নাইডু লন্ডন আসিল লন্ডন পড়িছে আর লন্ডন সাফরাজাইট এই যে বেটিন্তর অধিকারের আন্দোলনও অ্যাক্টিভ আছিল এই সময় তখন ইন্ডিয়ান ন্যাশনাল কংগ্রেসের লোকে অ্যাক্টিভলি জড়িত নাই আর কেমব্রিজ ইউনিভার্সিটির পড়িছে এরপরে ইন্ডিয়াত গিয়া ফিরত গিয়া ইন্ডিয়ান ন্যাশনাল কংগ্রেসের লোকে অ্যাক্টিভলি জড়িত হইছে এবং দেখছে যে ব্রিটিশের বিরুদ্ধে ফ্রিডম মুভমেন্ট কিলা চলা উচিত আর কিলা ইগু চলেন না এবং সারা অবজারভেশন থাকি সরোজিনী নাইডু একটা দেখছে হলো একমাত্র পলিটিশিয়ান হিন্দু এবং মুসলমানের মাঝে এই সময় একমাত্র পলিটিশিয়ান যে ব্রিটিশ ইম্পেরিয়ালিস্টর হলটির তাকে বেশি বুদ্ধিমান মরালি হাইলি qualified and competent তো এই পলিটিশিয়ানর ক্যারেক্টার তারিফ করিয়া সরোজিনী নাইডু বই লেখছে 1917 ইংরেজি নাম কিতা বেটার বেটার নাম অফকোর্স মোহাম্মদ আলী জিন্না অনেকে কইছেন যে সরোজিনী নাইডু আর মোহাম্মদ আলী জিন্নায় পার্সোনাল সেক্সুয়াল রিলেশনশিপ আছিল কিন্তু যারা অ্যাকচুয়ালি মোহাম্মদ আলী জিন্নারে বা সরোজিনী নাইডুরে দেখছে তারা কইছে যে জিন্না টু বিজি পলিটিক্যালি he was not interested in any such relationship with not just Sarojini Naidu but anybody else but he duly recognized her qualities and talents and respected her acknowledged her Now, সরোজিনী নাইডু ঢাকার বেটি, ঢাকার ফ্যামিলির বংশ হইল ঢাকার, কিন্তু ইকান ওই যে আবদাল কুফার চৌধুরীর মতো মানুষে ইকান স্বীকার করতো না। অথচ জিন্নার একমাত্র কথা আছিল যে উর্দু and উর্দু alone shall be the Pakistan state language. এটা কোনো গাইল দিছে না তো অন্য ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ রে। অথচ আবদাল কুফার চৌধুরী এরা এগুলো অত বাড়াইছে যে জিন্না যেমন নিজে পার্সোনালি বাংলা ভাষারে এবলিশ করে দিছে। That was a statement as an opinion Jinnah made. Nothing more. অথচ আবদাল কুফার চৌধুরী সিলোটিরে বেইজ্জত করছে ওখান কইয়া যে সিলোটি তো জঙ্গলি। জিন্নায় কিতা কইছে নি যে স্পিকার্স অফ বেঙ্গলি আর জাঙ্গল পিপল? নেভার। অথচ জিন্নারে তারা যেভাবে গাইল দেয় মনে হয় যে জিন্নায় বিরাট অপরাধ করছে, অথচ জিন্না only expressed an opinion. Now, put that in context. নাইডুর বই থেকে দেখা যায় যে সরোজিনী নাইডুর মতে, এটা অবশ্যই একজনের মত, কিন্তু ক্লোজ একজন অ্যাক্টিভ কলিগ হিসাবে সরোজিনী নাইডুর অবজারভেশন জিন্না সম্পর্কে হইল যে জিন্না হাইলি ইন্টেলিজেন্ট and had the highest moral integrity, and he possessed the highest intellectual abilities as compared to any of his contemporaries. And by those she meant mainly the ruling British, because at the beginning of the 20th century, 103-4 years ago, the main occupants of positions of power in the subcontinent were, of course, white British people. And Naidu had no lack of evidence to show that Jinnah towered above all of them. Incidentally, when Jinnah was at the Lincoln's Inn a few years before that, all of that, when he was doing the formal kind of thing as a pupil at the Lincoln's Inn, he was known as the tallest man with the yellow jacket. Now, the way that Imran Khan has been talking about Muhammad Ali Jinnah these days, these last 4 months, he has been, of course, talking about Jinnah as well as Muhammad Iqbal. Both of them highly deserve due and full and respectful reference and recognition, which is what Imran Khan is giving them. The problem with Imran Khan doing that is that he's leaving out Maulana Abdul Hamid Khan Bashani. And he's leaving out the tiger, the Sher Bengal, Fazlullah. Fazlullah Shah physically was like a tiger, as well as intellectually. So Imran Khan is doing injustice to both those leaders and others. And without explaining the actual details of why Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who was playing the role of the ambassador of Hindu-Muslim unity, why Muhammad Ali Jinnah was forced to abandon that particular pursuit and start on the course of setting up a Muslim homeland for the Muslims of the subcontinent. That is undermining Imran Khan's own slogan, which is Pakistan ka matlab kya? La ilaha illallah. A lot of information, factual information, unique, contemporary information is contributed by Sarojini Naidu, a woman who was born a Hindu but who actually looked looked at the events with an impartiality that is not seen among any of the women writing in the Indian papers nowadays, including some of the ones that are given platforms in the Guardian of London. The Guardian is particularly anti-Muslim. It's a kind of cave-in or coven of corruption and anti-Muslim poisonous hatred and denial. We shall be talking about Sarojini Naidu in due course and quoting from her. We say lesson in what can happen today. The reason why I started about 3 years ago talking about the contextual evaluation of what happened in August 1947 is being echoed by Imran Khan. But I foresaw that not just 3 years ago, but I've seen this for as long as I have been aware of what happened in 1947, let's say. One of the reasons why I supported the Jukto Front in mid 1950s election led by Abdul Hamid Khan Bashani, and why I opposed the Muslim League slate at that election. That was my first involvement in active electoral politics in the years after the British left in August 1947. Muslim League or Banga Lemton Deni Bayade. That was the slogan that we rejoiced in reciting, because the Jukto Front, led by Maulana Abdul Hamid Ghavashani, had that famous Noukar Baksho. আর মুসলিম লীগের আছে ল্যাম্পটন, মুসলিম লীগের বাঙ্গা ল্যাম্পটন দে নিবাইয়া দে. When I became aware of the people dying of starvation because of the famine following the floods during the 1950s, I was absolutely, I'm totally clear about my feeling inside. I was overcome by a sense of how is it that these people are dying and I can't help them. Now that is the sense that I remember from the 1950s when I heard people died due to lack of food, hunger. So when the cyclone hit southern Bangladesh on the 30th of April 1991, I resumed writing lines of hunger from Bangladesh. Now remember, I'm saying resumed. because I had been mentally, intellectually writing, authoring, scripting the lines of hunger. Well, that was East Pakistan, but by the time the cyclone of 30th of April 1991 hit, it was Bangladesh. But essentially, the environment, the environment had been the main cause for the deaths in the 1950s and the deaths that happened in subsequent cyclonic events and water related disasters. So when Imran Khan says that in the 1960s, in West Pakistan, as he recalls, people are blaming East Pakistan. People in West Pakistan were blaming people of East Pakistan for cyclone. Now, how grotesque and stupid of Imran Khan, the leader of the revolution now, to say that. How could he say that the people of East Pakistan were in any way to blame for the cyclone that they were suffering? Now, that was the time the cyclone, the first devastating cyclones that hit Chittagong in 1961, coincidentally also was the period when India was being attacked by China in the northeast. And China and India were in conflict. So there was a competition between the two events. I still don't know exactly how many people lost their lives in 1961 as a result of the cyclone that mainly hit Chittagong, but not exclusively. It hit other parts of the country, but Chittagong was the most heavily devastated part. I mean, up to the tsunami when it happened decades later, there was no record of anything like the tsunami, of course, because the range and the depth and the devastation that the tsunami or a tsunami caused was not anything like the cyclone, no matter how deep the cyclone was, because the tsunami is far wider reaching and far more devastating than a cyclone. So I witnessed well three main kind of water related disasters. One was the one 1961 when I first encountered this kind of water related disaster. Encountered, I didn't actually physically witness it because I was in Silot and this all happened in south of the country, East Pakistan. And I remember reading the only two newspapers that were publishing and were available and were delivered by the post at our house in Sundarpur were the Azad and the Ittifaq. And of course, there were pictures and there were allegedly or supposedly eye account reports. But I don't remember reading anything other than the actual most sincere and heartbreaking accounts of the victims and the people who have been caused losses of their homes and so on. So, where did Imran Khan find this blame? Blame the people who have been affected by the cyclone and the disasters. I suppose Imran Khan is sheltering his family. Remember, the I think Imran Khan is either a nephew or a cousin of the main commander of the Pakistan military in 1971 in East Pakistan, who is a Niazi. Imran Khan is a Niazi because his name has got at the end a Niazi. So he is a Niazi, and strangely enough, he is also related to a good Niazi who is Nahid Niazi, the woman who was married to the Bengali Musleuddin and who remains one of the best loved singers, loved across East Pakistan and beyond. One of her numbers is, of course, Akasher Nilvale, Josnar Deep Chale Hoi. Was it that one or no? This one about this is probably sung by somebody else, but that one, the one that she's, or a number of the items that she is famous for is the one that she is famous for. I shall be checking on that one. Let me just get this absolutely right. Now, this is the one that she is famous for. Akasher, ওই মিটি মিটি তারার সাথে কইব কথা নাইবা তুমি এলে. This is, of course, written by Musleuddin, who was an accomplished lyricist and writer, singer himself. So this is the one that Naid Niazi sang. Akasher oi মিঠি মিঠি তারার সাথে কইব কথা নাইবা তুমি এলে for copyright reasons I'm not playing it the video but I've located the thing which is as good because that's the actual sourcing and the reference. So Naid Niazi remains without any doubt among the best loved singers in the Bengali language, and there is no contamination associated with her. Whereas Niazi, the general, who was her uncle, is of course dead now, but he was the commander that led the attack on the civilians in East Pakistan. Now, I have said for the last 3 years that Imran Khan should apologize. I didn't say that would be enough. I said he should start by apologizing for the murders of the innocent East Pakistanis, children, women, and adults, the rapes of the women and children and the girls. And then he should state most urgently that compensations, no compensation would be coming anywhere near compensating the victims, but he should be preparing the compensation. He has not mentioned that. Now, in his speeches, he keeps referring to the Pakhtunwalas, who were among the main casualties, Pakistani casualties of the American war that was fought over Afghanistan. He has even said, he keeps saying that 80,000 Pakistanis' lives were kurban, sacrificed because of the American policy being followed by Pakistan. How is 80,000 more important than 800,000 people in East Pakistan? And Imran Khan has to answer this. He cannot get away. Who gave, from what source of law, and I'm coming to the rule of law in a minute, who gave the authority to anyone in the then Pakistan military for a single attack to be mounted against one child, one woman, one man in East Pakistan in 1971? What source? Because Imran Khan has been saying in his speeches that rule of law, he's saying, and I've earlier in this particular edition, I've already pointed out its weakness. He said that where there is rule of law, there is a guarantee of stability and justice. Well, the evidence of the last thousands of years contradicts that, because rule of law can be any list of laws in any society. And the fact that a piece of law is a law does not mean that it is a just piece of law or it is a piece of just law. So, for example, in the Nazi era, all these prosecutors, all these magistrates or the equivalents were giving the kind of legitimacy, legitimizing the various acts of murder and rape and whatever by citing various codes, that is the law. So Imran Khan has got a big gap there in the general perception of rule of law. When it comes to the 1971 massacres and rapes of civilians in East Pakistan, Imran Khan has got far bigger liability. And he has not even mentioned. He has not even mentioned that. He says, as if he's in a rush to get away from that particular topic. He says that we did injustice and the East Pakistan got away or separated from us, left us. That is a lie. East Pakistan was systematically targeted for butchery. Well, we know now. We didn't know at the time because I didn't know at the time, as I have said before. Most ordinary people didn't know at the time unless and until they were the victims. For example, when we, myself and my siblings and my mother, we rushed away from Sondarpur to seek temporary shelter in Furushpal in the nearest village in the Bianibazar Thana area. We did that after word reached Sondarpur that the Pakistan army was about to reach Dahadukin to commit the crimes that they were committing in places that they had already arrived at or been visited or had visited. That was the word, not the sight. We didn't see it. So if the Pakhtunwalas, which is what the particular group that had the maximum casualty from their communities because of the American war over Afghanistan, if the Pakhtunwalas are deserving of sympathetic reference by Imran Khan, which is what he has been doing, mentioning the Pakhtunwalas and referring to their sacrifices in a sympathetic way. If that is the case, which is absolutely correct, if the particular group in the community suffers that kind of casualty and losses, then how is it that those uncounted numbers of civilian children, women, and men in East Pakistan don't deserve a mention? And this is 52 years, 53 years, 50 years, let's say, 5 decades, sixth decade, into the sixth decade. And as I said before, the idiocies of Zulfikar Bhutto included him greeting the bogus helicopter that landed in Lahore and him going to the helicopter and greeting the pilot and whatever. And that was the moment when Indira Gandhi could not contain her joy at Zulfikar Bhutto's idiocy. She announced to the world that Pakistan was violating Indian sovereignty. And from that moment onwards, Pakistan would be banned from flying over India to East Pakistan and back. That was one idiotic act by Zulfikar Bhutto. And the other one was, of course, his speech at the United Nations. Zulfikar Bhutto, as a speaker, as a public speaker, nobody knows him better than I do, no matter where they are from. Because I'm the one who defeated Bhutto by throwing at him 9 separate questions. Every single one devastated him and defeated him, left him more injured than before. And he couldn't take the 10th question. He was seriously injured. Bhutto took out a rumal and he was sweating, and he took a right turn on this stage at the Institute of Engineers, and he did a military style march out of the Institute of Engineers and reached the Intercontinental Hotel not far from the Institute of Engineers. And within a very short time after that, he was off. He was away from East Pakistan. I had sent Bhutto running. So when he spoke at the United Nations, Zulfikar Bhutto spoke ignorantly. He came across Mukh Fulaya Matise, but he came across deeply fundamentally ignorant. Because if he had thought about the speech, if he had thought about his own role in creating the crisis, his own role in denying Sheikh Mujib any kind of space resulting from the December 1970 election, he would not have made that speech. But Zulfikar Bhutto delivered that speech as if he was speaking to the United Nations as an enemy. He was actually speaking to a world audience, and he was in a pivotal position to give the facts about the matlab of Pakistan, or what Imran Khan has been talking about now. If Bhutto had done that, then the image of Bhutto that came across in the United Nations would have been the very opposite of what it became. Because he was seen as a haughty, egotistic, ignorant, unfeeling, lacking in compassion, brute, bully. Whereas Indira Gandhi was enjoying an image that actually hid her own personality and her own tactics. But because of Bhutto, Indira Gandhi, who was ruthless and following a very ruthless policy, was enjoying an image that showed her to be compassionate, sympathetic, understanding, and all the rest of it. So Bhutto's public image was destroyed by him. I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that he came from the family in Larkana that owned so much wealth. And he personally felt that no matter what losses other people suffered, he won't lose anything. So, by all accounts, Bhutto was unfit, from the word go, unfit to be in a position of holding any high position in the state. As for Sheikh Mujib, I studied Sheikh Mujib from close quarters politically, not personally. Politically, I studied his politics, close quarters for 3 years, but before that, I studied his reports and reported speeches. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto was one side of ego, and Sheikh Mujib was the other side of the ego. Sheikh Mujib lacked depth of political understanding, and he had no respect for the fighters for freedom, the leaders of the freedom movement, like Abdul Hamid Khan Bashani, like Sher Bangla Fazlullah. Sheikh Mujib, when compared to Abdul Hamid Khan Bashani, Sheikh Mujib behaved throughout the 1960s as a disrespectful instrument of some force that wasn't visible around him but was controlling him with a string. There is nothing. There is nothing in the actual speeches that Sheikh Mujib made at any stage that shows the kind of depth that needed to be there. And he didn't respect people, even people like the true popular leader, Abdul Hamid Khan Bashani, or the true intellectual giant and strategist, Sher Bangla Fazlul Haq. His daughter, Sheikh Hasina, has completely removed these giants from all references about Bangladesh. She will not be forgiven by history when she is no longer in position of power. The damage that she has been causing to the country can only be compared with the damage that Sheikh Mujib did to the legacy of Maulana Abdul Hamid Khan Bashani and Sher Bangla Fazlul Haq. I mean, they looted, they robbed the work of Maulana Bashani. Maulana Bashani had the name of the party, Awami Muslim League. And the handlers, the operatives that handled Sheikh Mujib, removed the word Muslim. So they robbed the name, they twisted it, and they created a monstrosity called Awami League without any sense, any morality or ethics. It is like calling a newspaper without any name. Like this idiot, Samad Chowdhury, produced the thing called the Potrika. What a stupid name! Then Manik Mia, that is the first Hussain Manik Mia, stole Maulana Abdul Hamid Khan Bashani's newspaper, the Ittefaq. From the name, it's nothing to do with Bengali nationalism. Ittefaq is nothing to do with Bengali. Awami is nothing to do with Bengali. So these morons saying that the Ittefaq is the Bengali. Ittefaq was established by Maulana Abdul Hamid Bashani, who is the real far-sighted leader for the whole region, not just Bengal but Assam as well. And he saw these things absolutely correctly. So these thieves, Manik Mia stole the Ittefaq. And he never acknowledged. He never acknowledged that it was the Maulana who set up the paper and the name. I mean, you could not imagine a more elegant name for a newspaper, combining so many aspects, so many elements in one word. But then Manik Mia turned the paper away from the direction that it should have been going. The result was that there was chaos created in the ideology. Instead of demanding accountability, an acknowledgement and admission from the West Pakistanis for the creation of the country and the duties and the obligations that the leaders of the movement for Pakistan were owed, Manik Mia started a completely infantile, stupid kind of adventure. The column Musafir, the Musafir column was, well, the Musafir itself is not a Bengali word, is it? But the Musafir column was grabbed hold of by him and it became a kind of platform for his own ignorance and prejudices. As the man speaking at the Lahore Bar Association seminar said in a short reference to East Pakistan, the real Pakistanis were East Pakistanis. Now, Manik Mia should have understood that 50 years ago, 60 years ago, because he was closer to the events that this lawyer has spoken about last week, 60 years later. Too many phenomenal events took place in the subcontinent or affecting the future of the subcontinent politically and socially during the years 1905. Too many important things happened in 1905. And those events shaped the subcontinent, which is what it is now. When they say that Sheikh Mujib was the best human being, now how sick is that? They're talking about a man who was nowhere when giants like Sher Bangla Fazlul were dominating the field in the subcontinent. Giants like Abdul Hamid Khan Bashani. I mean, what quality of character, what aspect of the character do they identify in Sheikh Mujib's character that justifies them calling him the best Bengali? How dare they? How many Bengali characters have they studied? As I said, Sheikh Mujib made a very clear and absolutely phenomenally stupid statement on the 6th of September 1917 in his house, 32, Dhanmondi, in front of me and 4 other journalists. If he had the knowledge and if he had the depth and understanding of political leadership, he would not have made that statement at all. Because it was us that decided separately not to mention it in the reports that saved Sheikh Mujib from immediate prosecution for treason. We saved him from treason, trial for treason. I mean, he was ill-advised and foolish. And he was out of control intellectually, morally. There was nothing from the publication in 1966 of the 6-point program of the so-called Awami League up to the minute on the 6th of September 1971, Sheikh Mujib spoke to us at number 32, Dhanmondi. There was nothing in his speeches during those 6 years. None of the speeches that Mujib made dealt with the constitutional, the historic issues that needed to be dealt with. And to this day, his daughter Sheikh Hasina is pretending. She is pretending that Bangladesh is a gift to the people of Bangladesh from the Hindu nationalists, the Brahmins. How absurd! Bangladesh is a direct result of the events of 1905 and events that preceded the 1905 division. In 1917 January, the Jamaat-e-Islami, the East Pakistan Jamaat-e-Islami held a rally in the Polton Maidan. And it was absolutely unbelievably stupid. As an internationally objective observer, I had to go there to see what stupidity they were going to get involved in. And the main leader on the front, on the platform, was a man from Chittagong, Ghulam Sarwar. Now, Ghulam Sarwar showed what an idiot he was politically. He had the microphone. Now, because Maududi was the speaker or the listed speaker, the Awami League and other people who were hostile to Maududi correctly decided to target the event. Well, they did get it absolutely correct from their standpoint. So what they did was because there are two main entrances to the Paltan Maidan. The one to the south was the nearest to the road. The entrance to the north were not as clearly identifiable. So when the Awami League or their supporters, 100, 200, whatever the number, decided to physically launch themselves at the Jamaat Islami gathering, they chose two fronts. One from the west, which is opposite the cinema, what used to be called the Jinnah Avenue, and the other was from the south, where nearer to the what used to be called the governor's house, which is the Bongo Bhavan or whatever it later became. And instead of confusing the attackers, Ghulam Sarwar kept issuing on the loud hailer or the microphone clear direction as to where the Jamaat Islami should be using, what exit they should be using, and escaping through which of the exits. Now, the minute he identified which exits the Jamaat Islami participants would leave by, the attackers knew where to go and attack them. I could not believe my ears what Ghulam Sarwar was doing. So this is one of the examples that I physically witnessed of the Jamaat Islami's stupidity. Politically, the Jamaat Islami has been blamed or claims credit for being responsible for supporting the Pakistan army in 71. Now, as I've said, Niazi was an idiot, and as was the Jamaat Islami. They had no idea what the hell they were doing. If they were supporting one another, it wasn't clear to ordinary people like us, because as we fled Sandarpur to go to Furushpal, there was no sign anywhere of any politics from any of these people, Jamaat Islami or their so-called regime they were supporting. The people, ordinary people in the country, were left totally exposed to any kind of random attacks by anyone. So far from being what the Zionists and the other propagandists from the protection of the USA and the British likes of the Guardian and others, like Lawrence Lifschultz and other criminals, they fantasize and create a scenario that in 1971 there was a well worked out program of attacks. There was no such thing. Lifschultz and other criminals have gone silent now because they overhyped their fantasy theories about who might have murdered Sheikh Mujib. Of course, Sheikh Mujib was murdered and he should never have been murdered. That is one thing. Nor should any of his family have been murdered or attacked. But to say that is not to say that the circumstances that prevailed during the months before these serial murders took place, the circumstances were created by who? There is no account. There is absolutely no account that any criminal like Lawrence Lifschultz and other hocus pocus socialist liars, they are all CIA operatives. They could not know, they were not there, but even if they were there, they could not know the difference. They didn't know that the moral authority of Sheikh Mujib had been taken away from him. By who? By the extended gangs of cabals, of lackeys and self-seekers and junkies. Those people were around Sheikh Mujib because they had a particular interest in appearing to praise him, appearing to support him. And none of them had the morality to tell him that most of his clothes had gone. Sheikh Mujib was sitting there, rhetorically speaking, let's say, without any clothes, and he was quite happy that nobody could see him in that state. For the best part of the previous 3 years, the country had been ravaged by hunger. Now, Lifschultz says that it was the CIA that created the hunger. Fuck off. The country was in a state of famine, and it wasn't created by the fucking CIA. It was created by a combination of India, the CIA, and others, but mainly by those morons that pretended to be advisors to and friends of Sheikh Mujib. People are dying in the streets, and hungry people are being ferried out of the streets of Dhaka in order to hide them. In order to hide them. In order to hide the skeletons of people that were starved and were dying. Women didn't have clothes to wear. These are not some kind of sophisticated conspiracy by the fucking Pakistani or fucking CIA. It was the fucking absurd incompetence on the part of the criminals that pretended to be Sheikh Mujib's friends and well-wishers. Sheikh Mujib was himself naked, that is politically, and nobody was telling him that he was naked and needed to put on clothes. That is to say, He had to get a grip. He didn't have a grip. Now, this is the kind of thing that would not happen if there was a serious, well thought out plan on the part of Shah Mujib himself before 71, before he declared the war and in March and in other speeches. There was no plan. There was no plan that could be delivered to the people. There was no plan that the people could understand. And there was no linear connection. There was no line management in the consciousness of the people. So what you see in Bangladesh now, with Sheikh Hasina being in control because the opposition is dead, that is a continuation. That is a continuation of what was happening before. These people who claim to be leaders of political parties in Bangladesh, let's say Sheikh Hasina's party, Khaleda Zia's party, these people say that they are political leaders and political kind of path showers. They are not anything of the kind. They are not fit to provide the claim that they can work out a strategy for delivering basic service, basic support, and basic access to ordinary people in the country. And among the ordinary people in the country, in Bangladesh, there is no evidence of enough selflessness for any initiatives to be taken in parts of the country, not in Dhaka itself necessarily, but in various parts of the country where the various disasters happen to affect people. For instance, the recent floods, monsoon floods. I mean, after the 30th of April 1991 cyclone that affected southern Bangladesh, I wrote a whole range of analytical pieces, planned pieces, and I sent them to the United Nations in Geneva, and I sent them to the Bangladesh missions in Geneva, in the United Nations as well, in New York as well. And I said that there had to be a cost-effective way of dealing with water-related disasters that affected Bangladesh regularly. By cost effectiveness, I meant and I mean that instead of treating the water-related attacks as attacks and as negative events, those could be turned into positive events and used as resources to both salvage and rescue the people, and to make sure that future similar kind of events didn't take place with the severity that so far had been witnessed in the water related disasters. There were several things that I outlined. Nobody else has outlined that. And I said that water needed to be turned into the resource which it is not used as so far in Bangladesh. So there was nothing in the years of 1972 to August 1975 that actually saw the appearance of an administration structure that was based on integrity, honesty, and loyalty to the people. The regime that was kind of fronted by Sheikh Mujib, either as prime minister or as president, was a bankrupt, morally bankrupt regime, which is made of vultures like Shaitan Sharif and other criminals who wanted to make the most of the public resources while the country bled to death or starved to death. All of these things were tangible, powerful kind of spurs for something that had to be done. Because Sikh Hasina was not there because she was an infant. What happened was that nobody was telling Sheikh Mujib that he was naked. So he had to be kind of held to account. How do you do that? Nobody was going to outline how to do that. So there was this lack of direction as to the future of the country. Whatever tanks and whatever came, it was not something that could have been done in the void. This had to be connected to the overall lack of preparation, lack of defense, lack of protection. There was none of these things around Sheikh Mujib. He was not ready to be defended. He was not suited to be protected because he was defenseless. So he didn't have to have a tank or an armored brigade coming in. Sheikh Mujib was vulnerable throughout the period. Now, his own family made his vulnerability complete. The family that was there. Somebody who was, well, who was later to be deified, because the way that Sikh Hasina refers to Sheikh Mujib and decorates every single part of the country with his name and his picture shows the lunacy and the madness that is bound to disappear with an avalanche of protests and rejection that is bound to come sometime. I'm not saying where it will come from, but there is a serious emptiness in Bangladesh that is bound to be filled by some kind of substance. There is a substance now. And the likes of Anayatullah Khan's brothers, so-called socialists of various description, these criminals are doing no service to the country, no service to democracy. They have no international voice. There is no platform. There is no morality in their behavior. They're suckers, opportunists. And various ways of this kind of behavior were witnessed during the 9 months when the so called four student leaders located themselves in Calcutta. And by accounts later collected, they were indulging in the most grotesque, serial, sexual adventures and abuse. They were not leading a freedom fight. We shall be continuing all of these updates in due course. Now, what time is it now? In the UK, British Standard Time, it's 01:26 hours. UK time is at 0:26 GMT on Saturday, the 24th of September 2022.